the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner. One of the beauties of coming to High Ash Farm, as we do each week for these podcasts, is that we don't have to leave Chris Skinner's front door for a few yards, and we're across an amazing array of bird life.
Oh, Matthew, we haven't even left the farmyard yet. And a swallow, in fact two, just landed right in front of us. There's a little trail of water, which I encourage the girls who fill up their buckets for the livery to let it run on the farmyard. So there's a mixture of mud and straw. Another one just coming down and gathering some mud. And we're just looking up to the right, and we've got a new diesel store, and it's all alarmed with a fairly new building surrounding it for security. And there's 42 sparrow nest boxes just under the eaves of the building, and there's two cameras up there, one facing to the left, one to the right, to capture some of the sparrows. And it's fledgling time almost for the second brood. Oh, female's just come on the right hole, a whole row of holes in front of us. And yes, the young just putting their head out of the nest hole behind her. She moves out of the way. Oh, they've all popped their heads back in again.
As soon as she arrived, obviously they're interested in whatever she's got for them.
Yes, and mainly it's insectivorous food. There is a sparrow hide quite close to us, but there's dry grain in there, and obviously you can't feed that to the young sparrows. It's sort of another one right above the doorway. I ran out of nest box spaces and put an extra 4 in just above the door. Oh, she's now going in, and she's gone in. Another one just coming, female, right in front of the cameras. And when we look down the row in front of us, sparrows nearly on every perch available. There's the youngsters sticking their head out. A dad has just arrived, so male and female are feeding the youngsters. And it's what's happened here is huge change around from sort of war against the sparrows, because they're an agricultural pest, particularly in some countries in Africa in particular. They can raid crops and eat one grain and drop 10 on the ground. Another female's just come. That little nest of youngsters is really well looked after. And I've been counting the visits on the cameras, and there's over 2,000 visits a day. They start really early in the morning and feed the young until almost sunset. Really industrious. I know a pair of blue tits, for instance, will have 10,000 visits of caterpillars to get the chicks to fledging, but I've never recorded the amount of visits for house sparrows before. They just amazing. A red list species as well now.
We had some on the ground there as well. I expect they're pecking at anything they can find.
Well, the adults are eating grain, and to eat grain, when you don't have teeth, you have to find grit. And after the storm a week, 10 days ago, it washed the farmyard, and we have little rivulets of sand on the ground, and they will choosily pick that up, and that's what they use to grind the food down in their gizzards. So sand and grain together, and they make this paste as well, so you'll see them drinking water, and they can feed that paste to the youngsters, but it can't be dry food, because obviously most birds, particularly sparrows that we're looking at the moment, Passer domesticus, can't carry water in their beak, so all the moisture for the youngsters has to come in. But how they cope with the warmth of it's a brown sort of and brick building, it gets quite hot in there, but the youngsters seem to thrive on it. I never have sparrows dropping on the ground in the hot days that we've recently had. But wow, what a lovely way to start this week's podcast without even moving the truck.
Yeah, we're sitting here in Chris's pickup. We've got a busy time ahead of us, so we're going to set off very shortly, but what a lovely sight, the sparrows, the 40-odd nesting holes there, and you'd have more, wouldn't you? I mean, you'd have more hole than building there if you could.
That's right. It would be called a colander, I think. But there is more, because just over in the tree over there, there's 20 vertical nest boxes made out of tree trunks, and then all around there, we've got well over 100 nest sites in the farmyard, and that's what's happened. They got down to about 2 pairs or 3 pairs 25 years ago, and to halt and reverse the decline of any bird species is a monumental effort. It doesn't happen by accident, but as you can see, a cockbird now coming down, perhaps with some food, just on the edge of the roof, and he's just a bit cautious, so he's flown up onto the ridge of the next building. But both male, it's lovely because it's the modern way of bringing up your children. Both parents are feeding the kids. Some birds, the males just desert the females completely. Pheasants is an example. Mallard is another example where the male mallard, the drake, just deserts the female and she's left all alone to bring up. Oh, another female just come feeding the young without going in the hole. Little perches just underneath the holes.
Yes, you've fitted them perches, haven't you?
Yes, so they can perch on outside, either to Sunday. We're just rolling forwards a little bit, and the heads have just gone back in the hole. But they're not at all worried. And hole number 3 there, that's a cock sparrow with his head sticking out of the hole. Yeah, what a delight.
For once in this very hot and sunny season, it's overcast. There's no sign of rain, and it's perfectly pleasant. Shirt sleeve order for Chris and myself, but it's still, and we've got a bit of a respite, Chris, from that heat.
Yes, I think the humidity and the heat is going to return after this weekend, so I'm not looking forward to that. It's always quite arduous. It's sort of an extra dimension of working in the hot conditions, although we've got air conditioning in all the tractors and with the height of luxury, but I spend a lot of time outside the tractor cab as well. Sort of still doing the full farming working week, which starts, I won't mention the times, it's very early and finish at sunset usually, but it's a glorious way. This is my office, the sort of farm and all the things growing on it, and every inch of it until the early 2000s was ploughed and was cropped, and now there's really no food production here at all, a huge turnaround, and nature has sprung back at me with vengeance. It's absolutely amazing. So each week that you come, I'm able to show you new plants that have arrived, celebrate some of the ones, and the creatures that inhabit the farm as well, the mammals and the invertebrates as well, are all coming back in absolutely almost by magic. I think if you provide habitat for creatures, they'll come back eventually. Anyway, I'm going to introduce you to somebody we have never visited before. I've discovered it by accident. Well, it's actually got a lady's name. It's called Bouncing Bet.
Right. That sounds fun. Bouncing
Right.
Bet.
So the only way to describe it is everybody's quite familiar with Sweet Williams. And this is a plant. Its official name is soapwort.
Oh, right.
Right, and that gives a lot of clues away straight away. It's got very large white flowers, very like a sweet. I'm going down on my hands and knees. In fact, the top of the flower is now coming into flower before it opens up, is quite tight flower buds. The flowers are white with a little pink stamen right in the centre of them, and the petals are very thin, almost see-through. And the secret, how it gets its name, is I'm going to take one of the little leaves off, which are a bit serrated, and I'm going to squash it in my fingers, and after a second or two it should start to, and it's starting to go kind of creamy and soapy, and I'm beginning to get a green sort of stain on my finger. And when this plant is boiled, it has some very special properties. It's saline is part of its name, and saponification is the other part of its Latin name, and I'll tell you the whole name in a moment. And you can make soap from it, and the soap has special properties. This plant used to be grown bouncing bet near woolen mills in the woolen industry in the northern part of the UK for washing sheep's wool after the sheep had been shorn. And because of the very, very gentle nature of the soap, it's used for cleaning ancient fabrics in all the museums across the country, particularly silks, and the National Trust use it, and it's still used today.
So this is still in demand?
Yes, it's so gentle, the soap that's produced from it, and I had to write the Latin name down, and it's Saponaria officinalis is the correct name. So there we are. And it used to be fed as well in these areas where the woolen mills were. People would harvest it and feed it to cows. It's meant to improve their fertility and improve their milk flow as well because of the creamy white flowers and this sort of creamy effect you have from the leaves. So there we are. That's a new one that we've not visited before, soapwort.
And the fact that it's here, does that point us to a historical lesson about what this land was years ago?
That's quite possible, because Norfolk was very famous for its sheep and all the sort of industries that we had. Norwich itself was quite famous for making shoes, but if we go further north, you've got worsted, where fabrics were made. I used to wear worsted trousers at school, and they were very prickly. Rat, our terrier, has just joined us and nearly crashed through the soapwort.
Careful.
Yes, so really, really beautiful. So, yeah, for description, and I will get Laura Cuffin to come and photograph some of the flowers we're going to visit this morning, one or two special ones apart from this soapwort, so that people can actually see. But the best way to describe it, many people know that cluster of flowers on top of a stem, which is Sweet William. It's not related to Sweet Williams. We think it might be a native plant, but as it was grown commercially, it crops up in all sorts of places. So the history of why it's here, whether the seed dropped here or whether it relates to some industry on the farm here or locally, I can't answer. But this is a wonderful, wonderful plant. The first time we visited in all the years we've been together, Matthew, and it's quite something to suddenly see it like this. So bouncing bet, because of the flower heads, it's kind of celebration of what the actual plant looks like. I don't know how it got all these old ancient names.
It's a beautiful flower, isn't it? You could see that in your buttonhole.
Yes, you could, yes. Well, I have counted these ones, so I'll check they're all here after you've gone.
I don't think I've got a buttonhole to put it in.
But, yeah, just a little bit of the history. So we're going to quickly zip round a farm. It's almost like a magazine programme this morning, just because each week I mention at this time of the year, so we just cruise into July shortly, and the changes in the flora and fauna out on the farm are really rapid. Some of the plants only in flower for a week or two, and they're succeeded by the next generation coming along. So there's this huge succession, and so to keep pace with it, we have to keep darting about on the farm, and it's really fascinating. But there we are. That's a new one that we've never visited before. I've never had the opportunity. It does grow on one or two places on the farm, particularly near the Roman town, Venturicinorum, on the west side of High Ash Farm. There's quite a crop of it there, but this one's quite close to where we are doing our next spot, so I thought nice and convenient for us to visit this one. There we are, soapwort.
Bouncing bet.
Yes, and saponification, I had to learn about that at school. That's the process of making soap. So this green larva, which has got sort of detergent properties, but really, really gentle, and it's used for many museums across the country. And the Natural History Museum use it, anywhere where there's fabrics stored as well, and the National Trust, because it's so gentle, and they use that very gentle soap effect to lift back the colours of the original tapestries. Amazing amount of history.
We're on the edge of the farm here, and the busy A47, well, it's got plenty of traffic on it this morning. Someone mowing their lawn over there as well. So the real world is here.
Yes.
But I like to suspend my disbelief when I'm with you for an hour each week, Chris.
Oh, goodness. And the humidity's increasing this morning, so it's literally a warm welcome. I think we'll get to 25, 26 Celsius this afternoon. So good hay weather. If the sun comes out, the cloud cover is still with us at the moment, but if I look north, right up to the Norfolk coast, I can see the cloud is broken up there, and with the wind heading straight towards us, sunshine in quite short order, I think.
And we've seen so many rabbits this morning. They like this cooler weather, don't
Yes, I should get in touch with my friend at the University of East Anglia, Dr. Diana Bell, who's Norfolk's, in fact, the UK's rabbit expert, and she's always interested in the comings and goings of the rabbits here at the farm, particularly after myxomatosis and then the new kid on the block, rabbit hemorrhagic disorder, which has decimated some of the rabbits at the University of East Anglia. But we've got about a rabbit an acre at High Ash Farm, give you an idea of the population. We've got over 600, and we must have just seen 20 just driving here. And funny enough, you observed it as well, they weren't in the shade. You know, they were out in the open because it's cloudy this morning, and they were all feeding, which is quite late as we're getting near mid-morning now. That's rather unusual to see them all out. But the buzzards are having a heyday because they're picking up all the young rabbits, and it's either eat or be eaten here at High Ash Farm. You have to watch your step, and the buzzards are just lazy hunters. They sit about on a old oak branch, and there's a pair nested in the woodland, which is Cantley Hill Plantation right behind us, and the young are still in the nest, ready to fledge now, and they just keep their eye out, and if they see a unsuspecting young rabbit about 3 to 4 weeks old, they just fold their wings down behind them and swoop in like a very large paper dart, and that's the end of the rabbit. And they don't even land on the ground. They carry on flying with a rabbit in one talon and take that back to feed the young.
And they're quite partial to jugged hare as well.
Well, probably the leverets. I don't think a buzzard would have a full-grown hare, but certainly leverets, and with the carrion crows here as well. But funny enough, red kites often I've never known them to kill live prey, and it's almost a daily sight here now to see red kite. I've brought us here, before I get carried away with too many bird stories, to introduce you perhaps to another new kid on the block that I don't think we've investigated before. And in front of us I can see bindweed, beautiful little trumpet-shaped flowers, which we have visited before, an agricultural pest, if you like, because it twines its way up cereal stems, and that's just what it's done to this grass here. It's actually grown round and gone round in a clockwise direction all the way up this little tall fescue plant, but the flowers are really stunningly beautiful, aren't they? Candy and white striped.
Pink and white again.
Yes, pink and white. And then this one is very close to the fellow we're going to be visiting in a moment. It's called white campion. It's got a cousin which likes growing more in the shade. This is light, sandy, drought-stricken soil, and the close cousin is red campion. And campion is a very tall plant. We think it's a derivation of champion. These plants used to be gathered and made into garlands when you had village games, and the winner of the games would have a garland of campion put round their neck. And really interesting plants, but we're just going to have to walk a couple of yards now, because we've just looked at the sort of white campion, which is all the way down the field margin here. It's in full flower. Oh, there's a pink campion over there. When the red and white
where
campion
Rat was walking.
Yes, he's I looked at Rat and then saw pink, not the dog colour, you understand, but pink campion, often the red campion and the white campion will cross as they're close relatives, and you get these hybrid colours coming through as well. Very little attractive, so the same plant. But here is another campion right in front of us, and this one we haven't visited before. Silene vulgaris, the bladder campion.
And I can instantly see why it's called the bladder campion,
Yeah.
because you've got this bulbous neck to the flowers, haven't you?
Yes, exactly that. That little bulb, it does look like a bladder, hence bladder campion is the common name. And the colour of it, once it's finished flowering, goes completely white. But when it's in flower, and you have these diminutive little white flowers coming out of the tip of the calyx is this whole structure that looks like a bladder. Now, in normal flowers, you'll have underneath the flower something called sepals, which are like little, they're usually green, and they sort of surround the base of the flower. Sepals, that is. Now, in the bladder campion, the sepals all join together and form this bladder-like structure, which looks like a balloon almost, and that's called a calyx. And then it flowers out of that. But just before the flowers open up, the little bladder structure looks exactly like a bladder with pink and stripes on it as well. And I used to, when I was very young, because it only grows on one place on High Ash Farm, which is exactly where we are, which is why these wildflowers are quite interesting. Their demands, which we don't realise, are really specific. So when you sow or have a go at sowing a wildflower field in your garden, might put 10, 15 varieties there, and only 1, 2, 3, if you're lucky, 4 actually thrive, because that's the suitable conditions. If you use the same flower mix a mile away with a different soil type, whether it's more acidic or more alkaline, you'll have a different set of flowers. So nature kind of works with what it's got, and these soil conditions there, this droughty, sandy, gravelly soil, is perfect for this plant, and this is the only place on the farm it grows. So bladder campion, and this is a real photogenic plant.
Yeah, I mean, they're marvellous. They look like gooseberries, don't they?
They absolutely do, don't they? Yes, when they're finished flowering. And when, as I was trying to explain, before I get carried away, before the flowers actually open, the bladders form, and you could actually pop them in your finger, and you do get a little popping sound, because they're so well sealed before the flower comes out. But this is a real target species for our photographer, Laura Cuffin, so we'll invite her along later today. It's right at the peak flowering time of year, late June, early July for this particular plant. Give you an idea, the plants are just over a foot tall. I'll go down to the base. The leaves look exactly like their cousins we just visited over there, the white campion. Little lance-shaped leaves which join the stem, and then little stipule leaves coming out all the way up the stem, getting smaller and smaller, and then finishing with these bladder-like structures at the top of the plant. They then, once it's finished flowering, the little calyxes, these little bladder-like structures, face upwards, and the seeds ripen within them. You can see some here which have gone over, facing vertically up, with a little hollow in the top. Once the seeds are ripened, they loosen in there, and then when you have the autumn gales, they flash about like that, and the seeds, little paper-like seeds, can drop out on the ground and start the process again. But there's quite a lot here, probably 1,000 flowers we're looking at just along this bit of margin.
But it likes this particular few square yards.
Yes, it's really strange, isn't it, how demanding some of our wild creatures and the wildflowers are, and even the grasses that we talked about last week, the limp and lagged Yorkshire fog, for instance, and then the opposite one who loves the dry conditions was the cocksfoot, and they're all specialists in their own particular field, if you like. So there we are, a new one for us, really delightful to see, and always thrills me when I see it. Bladder campion.
Swallows flying into one of the large barns at High Ash Farm, feeding their young. This is one of the big conservation success stories I know you're very proud of.
Just brings a huge delight. 4 youngsters just waiting for mum and dad.
The podcast aims to bring you sights and sounds like this every week, and we're very thankful of your support. So any donations or subscriptions are very welcome indeed.
All we need is a little bit of extra help. It just keeps it going from week to week.
Monthly or one-off subscriptions, whatever the size, and the website highashfarm.com/podcast.
6 youngsters right above our head, all with their gates wide open.
Horses have kindly provided us a path through the trees there and the stinging nettles and onto this marshy area of land. Quite odd compared with some of the other parts of the farm.
Look, if I do this jump up and down, you can probably just feel the ground moving for you.
So we're floating.
Yes, we are. The opposite to really where we just were, looking at the bladder campion on the sharp, dry sand, and we've come to the lowest point of High Ash Farm, the sort of farm bog, not far from us where the clump of willow is over there. My father's tractor is still down there, many feet down in the quagmire. Yes, we lost a Ford E27N many years ago.
So it got stuck and it sunk.
Yeah, it just disappeared, and yes, quite a story went round the village for that one for years and years and years.
Well, you wouldn't want that to happen now, would you? Because those tractors are hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Well, 100,000 certainly for many of them. There are some that are up in the £200,000 bracket now, all on display at the Norfolk show last week. So there we are, a big clump of brambles there in full flower, tall marsh welted thistles all the way round us, 5-6 feet tall.
Lovely purple flowers.
Yes, very attractive to butterflies. A large white feasting on the bramble flowers as they come out, quite rich in nectar. There's 3 or 4 of them over there actually, all fluttering away, and the dark woodland behind with the old shooting rides through it, perfect for some of our freshly emerged butterfly species now. Things like speckled wood, absolutely love it in there in the little sunny glades. But I brought you here because we've just been doing a kind of magazine program this morning, flitting round the farm to all the different habitats, and this is one of my favourite places on the farm. It's damp, it's very low, there's always a whole variety of different wildflowers choosing this as their habitat, and I love them. And there's one particular one which makes it sound not particularly attractive when I tell you its name. It's called red ragged robin, and I just love it to bits. I don't know why. It grew when I was at college on what we call the hangings, very close to where the Norfolk Showground now is at Barbara. There's some very steep riverbanks there, and at the bottom there's some marshland there, and red ragged robin grew in profusion there when I was at college, so I learnt to identify it. And it also has a cousin. Occasionally you have a pure white version of it as well, but they're really closely related. So I hardly dare go on my hands and knees for this, but I will do because it's time of celebration. Just look at this. Again, I will invite Laura Cuffin to come and take a photograph of this. It's got 5 petals on it, and each petal looks as though it's had a pair of scissors in there to snip it and to make it look very ragged. But it's delicate pink colour and very, very, very beautiful. Quite a tall plant because of the vegetation grows up quite tall. This one's about 24 inches tall, about 600 millimetres, and the leaves hug the stalk all the way up, lance-shaped leaves, and then the last 4 to 6 inches. We're right on the edge of the water, and Rat nearly stumbled into the proper bog part of it. He's going to come out with black feet now.
Don't want to go in there.
So it's just stunningly beautiful how nature can make such a lovely and delicate structure and be so beautiful and so kind of ragged at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yes, it's the pinky side of red, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And when they're first out, they are quite a lot deeper red, but this is, after a few days, the petals open up like that, almost like each petal has like got 4 or 5 little fingers on it. Very, very delicate, and just loves this really damp conditions here underfoot. Rat's decided to come on my lap now, so if I just part the soil a little bit, and we have this jet black soil at the bottom, and it's soaking wet, and I can just bring a little fingerful up, and you can see it's pure alluvial. I can just shape it almost into a little egg cup shape.
It's like plasticine.
It is like that. And it's got quite a very distinctive smell as well. It's always difficult to convey sense of smell. And when I look down there, I can see these triple leaves from another plant here, and that will be in flower in about 2 weeks' time. And that is meadowsweet as well. Lovely sort of aromatic smell. And this one here, I've just taken the top off it. If I just, again, I'm into crushing things because it gives you a lot. You can use another sense, and if I just crush it up, that's Mentha aquatica.
Oh, there's mint.
Yeah,
very
that's
strong
exactly
mint.
what it is. It's not the mint that we grow at the farm in the fields, on the arable fields. That's Mentha arvensis. This one is Mentha aquatica, so it's water mint, and it's quite a tall plant. And again, there's lots and lots of it here. It will come into flower in about 2 weeks' time, so we'll be heading up towards mid-July. We'll come back here because the flowers form a whorl all the way around the stalk, WHORL, quite unusual, and it's an absolute magnet for bees in the daytime. It stays open in flower at night, and for moths at night as well, so really important. But this red ragged robin in front of us is a hugely declining species, so I'm lucky to have it here. It's not rare yet, but it is now scarce in comparison to what it was. It grew so widely. Many of the old water meadows have been drained, and they're used for growing food, which is very important. A lot of the marshlands to the east of us, heading out towards Yarmouth and the Braden area, some of the marshes there were all drained, and they were just pink at this time of the year. I remember taking fishing in the summer months off the end of Yarmouth Pier with my father, and as we drove through the Acle Straits, the marshes each side would be pink with these particular flowers. All gone. So it's now quite a scarce plant, and it's just lovely. So you need little areas like this home to it. Broadland is really one of its home strengths. It grows particularly well in the area where we are in the UK, but now hugely declined. So some rushes now coming into flower all the way round us, and quite a wet area on the farm, even in a dry year like this. But that brings joy to my heart to see these little pink flowers. I'll remember it till the day I die. Red ragged robin.
Makes a great tongue twister as well.
It does, yes.
The ragged rascal ran round the red ragged robin.
I'm glad you could do that, because I couldn't. I think it's a tongue twister.
Clambering down a slope and through the vegetation here, which is of course out in full leaf at the moment, as we're just coming into July. But this is Cantley Hill Plantation, isn't it?
Yes, Matthew. Normally When we talk about badgers, we go to Fox's Grove, about half to 3/4 of a mile away to our west from where we're standing. And this is a new area of woodland that was allowed to grow up in the late 1800s with some nice mature beech trees behind us. And it's on quite a sharp south-facing slope. And we've got clay on top of the bank behind us, and then underneath where we are now is sand, almost pure white sand, very, very fine.
And look at all this excavated sand in front of us.
Yes, and that's the exciting bit, because I came here over a year ago and there was a few quite large mounds dug, and I was a bit suspicious. I had the camera here, and occasionally the camera was here for a full week. I picked up the odd badger, just one or two, never any real activity. And then this spring, I've really been surprised. Right through the spring, some really large mounds have been dug out. And so I thought, right, time to bring the cameras back and reveal the culprit. Foxes or badgers, I couldn't quite tell which. So the camera was tied up to the tree immediately behind where you're standing, focused on this large mound of sand, and delights. The first night I came to pick the camera up the next morning, and that evening two very large adult badgers emerged from the hole, and because it's Wimbledon season, we have a second set, 2 cubs as well. Wow. So really, really a lovely shot, sort of out of the blue. So High Ash Farm now has 2 official badger sets, one with 4 in, one to date I've counted 15 badgers on the other set, on the other side of the farm.
There is a road in between, isn't there?
There is.
But I would imagine that those badgers in the more established colony would come here sometimes.
Badgers are notorious for occasionally having huge family upsets. Happens in humans as well. And occasionally an old boar or even a young boar with a couple of sows will move away from the set and set up their own new territory. But generally, they're quite gregarious. They actually like being together. They scent mark each other. They have their own territory, and they mark the boundaries of their territory with scent marking. So you kind of know where your patch is, if you like. Now, the interesting thing is, behind us, there's a very small village or hamlet. It's just beside the 1332. It's less than a mile away. It's at Bixley, and there's another badger set there. So I don't know if those badgers have come here or the original set here at High Ash Farm in Fox's Grove has come here either. So I can't identify them. They obviously have their own story and their own sense, but they're very at home here. For the reason is, on this big sandbank, you can see a little kind of dip. There's well over a ton of sand there, to give you an idea of the volume that's been dug out, and further holes all the way down, so they've made this into a proper new set. And the sow came out, the 2 cubs went off, and I got it all on video, and she decided to just sniff the air. She rolled over on her back, she got both front paws right in front of the camera, and she had a good old bear scratch on her belly from top to bottom, and just absolutely delightful when you see mammals at home and relaxed and watch their behaviour. And that's what sort of brings a smile to my face and gives me the sort of energy to get up in the morning, if you like. It's something special about wildlife being at home somewhere and not having to fret about its existence, more often than not from human disturbance. So that's why I'll get that video posted on High Ash Farm Facebook for this Sunday's podcast programme, together with invitation from Laura Cuffin to photograph our bladder campion And the red-ragged robin has got to have a star feature in there as well. So you'll all be able to enjoy what we're visiting at the moment. Obviously the badgers are down well beneath us. It'll be a labyrinth of holes on this new set, and they're obviously being very, very active, enlarging the set instead of a couple living in it, there's now a family of 4.
Correspondence to finish with this week. Lots of emails, and thank you for all of them. We'll give you the address in just a moment, but we're just using the back of Chris's pickup as the pulpit for this week's sermon. Which reminds me, Roger Newman has emailed saying, I wonder if you could give me your opinion, please, on something I've offered to help with at our local church. All too often we find birds trapped inside the building, and the parish council are talking about bird gates, which I'm not too keen on the appearance of. They're also expensive. The church door is not left open very often, and I'm sceptical anyway that this is how they're entering the building. Is there any chance you could spare a few minutes for a chat about it, please, so we can exchange thoughts?
Yes, and I called Roger back, and we had more than a few minutes because there's lots of options there. So I suggested they keep the church door shut, although unlocked, so people can go in and out, and that then determines whether the birds are coming in through the church door and entering the church that way. I think it's Catfield Church, so it's not far from where we are. And the other possibility is they're coming in through the eaves, and they need to keep the eaves open because very bat-friendly church. They've got bats in the church as well, and it's not good to block the holes up where the bats are coming in and out. So I've done my best to help without causing any structural problems like bird gates, or that also look very unattractive and are expensive for the parish council or the church to fund. So I hope I've helped along the way and steered them a little bit to finding out the mystery of how the birds get in the church, and then sadly usually starve to death when they're in there.
An email from somewhere not very far away from here, Honningham. Steve and Fiona, who are doing their bit to try and rewild their garden with lots of marvellous wild flowers. Oxeye daisies they mentioned there as well. Now they obviously have to get access to their oil tank and sheds, so they cut a little way through and found some bees. They think they might be minor bees, about 5 mil long, quite fast flying, and there is a photo that they say is quite blurry. Actually, that's a good photo.
That is a pretty good picture.
Any help with identification?
Yes, it's one of the sand species that actually, they're solitary bees. Let's get that straight. They're not communal bees, so you won't have nests of them. One just coming out of a hole there, and you can see all the little particles of sand that it's excavated. So they'll be laying their eggs in there together with some pollen and some food for the larvae, and then the holes get sealed over, or you have heavy rain and it seals the grubs in there until this time next year. But that species is all now emerging as adults, and you can see the adult in the picture here has brought some pollen back on its what we call pollen baskets each side of the thorax there, and that's what it will use to feed the grubs. But very well observed, and you'll see lots of tiny little piles of sand around the entrance holes of these particular species. There's lots and lots of solitary bees. They're all kind of needing our help, but having a clear bit like that won't harm them. And the best description is, looks like a really miniature molehill with a tiny hole in the middle of it, and you'll see lots of them where you are at this time of the year.
Off we go now to Trinity County. That's California, Chris.
Wow, yes.
An expat called John Spink has sent us a line talking about when he was a youngster in the Leicestershire countryside. He'd often observe skylarks, hundreds of feet up, singing their hearts out. When they'd finished singing, they apparently just closed their wings and dropped like a stone, flaring their wings at the absolute last moment. I was always of the opinion that it was a technique to fool predators, as they landed many yards from the nest and then would make their way through the grass back to the nest. Is this correct?
Yes, well, that's an interesting observation because we don't actually know the truth of it whether skylarks do that as a kind of predator deterrent. Skylarks need to sing on the wings as their close cousins woodlarks do. Woodlarks do have somewhere to perch to sing from, but they prefer to fly and sing on the wing as skylarks do. So open country, and generally they'll sing above their own territory, particularly above where the female is nesting on the ground. Remember, they're ground nesting species. And he then sets out his territory and kind of shows his prowess by singing on the wing, not far from where we're standing, actually.
Right on cue, there is one here, isn't there? Just in the distance.
Just hear it in the distance. And there's lots and lots of them here at the farm. And it's something I've been fascinated by for years, watching them go up into a tiny speck, well described in your email, and then folding their wings. They'll either drop right down to the ground till almost the last second, or come down in kind of lift stages, if you like, one sort of drop at a time. And so they then land quite close to the nest and then scuttle across to the nest, but nearly always it's the male doing that, and the female will be incubating the eggs somewhere in the area where the male has landed. They like to be together, and they, both couples, the male and the female, will feed the nestling chicks before they've actually fledged down on the ground. So an interesting one. We don't have the full answer, but it's all part of that courtship display. And if I was a male skylark and I wanted to impress my female, I'd drop down like that and put my brakes on at the last second. It's a sort of modern way of sort of showing off, and skylarks had it first.
Kerry has sent us a sound clip, so let's have a listen. I recorded it in the middle of the countryside, away from any houses. I think it sounded like a bird of buzzard size, says Kerry, judging from the strength of the call. It came from way high up in some large trees.
Yes, I've had a close listen, and initially I thought it was young magpies, but I think the pitch is a little bit too high for magpies, so it then suggests something like sparrowhawk or kestrel, but I couldn't actually get my ears tuned in to identify it really precisely, so it's a bit of an unanswered question. And then there's a plane coming over the top, which always makes it difficult as well. The sound gets a little bit blurred, and some people talking in the background. So to be 100% certain, there's 100% uncertainty on that one, but I think possibly a small bird of prey like a sparrowhawk, which is about that pitch, but not a young buzzard.
Tina Woods, with her black and chocolate Labradors, going for regular walks, and her grandson as well is getting into nature. 5 years old. It's a budding Sir David Attenborough.
Yes.
Who's now in his 100th year.
Yes,
David
amazing.
Anyway, Tina sent us a photograph. She said, I thought you might like to see these budding early ladybirds.
Yep, and what a picture. It's a photograph of a ladybird larva. At this time of the year, ladybirds lay their eggs on the stems of plants. The eggs then hatch out into these little formidable little creatures, which are generally black with either red spots or pink spots all down the back, and basically they're aphid-eating chieftain tanks, if you like. They'll eat up to 200 aphids in a day. Absolutely continuous diet of aphids for breakfast, lunch and supper as well.
They should thrive this year then, because there's been a lot of green flies.
Absolutely, so really good. It's probably the larvae of the 7-spot ladybird, one of our commonest species. Oh, there's many species of ladybirds, including yellow ones, and of course the harlequin ladybird as well, sort of new arrival in the UK over the last decade or so. But these little larvae of the ladybird go through some amazing changes. We've talked about metamorphosis before. When you start off as an egg, then you end up as a caterpillar, but in the case of ladybirds, this little tank-like structure, beetle-like almost, ladybird eating, then it pupates and becomes the ladybirds that we all know and love, those bright red, very popular with children, and that's what we call metamorphosis, those huge changes that you go through when you're an insect or a butterfly. So thank you very much, and congratulations for your young Sir David Attenborough. Well done. Round of applause.
Email is chris@highashfarm.com for future episodes. We're delighted to always receive your questions, comments, bouquets, even brickbats.
Oh yes, the whole lot. We've got very broad shoulders here at the farm, and if you want to make a donation, that would always be welcome. Just visit www.highashfarm.com/podcast.
We're being serenaded.
I think so.